Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you about the latest from Wolfchant, Omega Bestia, out April 9th on Reaper Entertainment Europe. This album has 9 tracks, 41 minutes in length, and this is the band's 7th full-length studio album. They are a pagan folk metal band from Germany. And on this record they put together a very interesting structure. At least for 2 reasons I really gravitated to how this album is constructed. The first one is the fact that it has this classic heavy metal feel to it, almost new wave of British heavy metal in terms of how it's put together. When you look at the individual songs and how dynamic they are, the structure that they have to offer, and how that interacts with the soundscape of the songs and of the record, this is an album that allows you to have peaks and valleys, different looks, different perspectives, but still stay very cohesive across all 9 tracks. The other element of the structure is the fact that this record starts off with an instrumental intro track called Omega Bestia that bleeds into Komet. The two really become one. This allows you to understand where this record is going. It allows you to better understand the overall atmosphere, the overall soundscape, become immersed in it, and by the time Komet finishes, you don't want to look back, you just want to look forward and enjoy the rest of the ride. And that's exactly what you're going to be in for. A ride. Not necessarily a roller coaster ride, but it's definitely an album that has different looks, different feels at every single corner, but still staying very well connected because a lot of the same elements, not necessarily from a structural perspective, but more from a soundscape approach, stay very constant throughout the record. So while you're deviating from the beaten path every so often, you always find that this is an album that brings you back to that same path, allowing you to never really walk away too far from it and feel like the record is disconnected from track to track. Once you get into the soundscape, the sound is very layered. If there's one thing that you can take away from this album, is that it has tons of layers to it. You really have to sit back and listen to it. And I feel like every time you listen to this record, depending on how much attention you're paying to it, you're going to discover a different element. You're going to discover a different layer. And that's one of the most important aspects that this record really has to offer. The other one, as far as soundscape is concerned, is definitely how rich the sound is in the quality of approach. It doesn't matter what you're getting with each and every single song. It doesn't matter if one song is pulling you up or if the next one is bringing you down. The quality of sound, the quality of recording, the quality of execution stays true across all 9 songs. This allows them to try different things, different feels, and like I said, create a very layered record, but at the same time very well defined within its structure, within its boundaries, within its sound. Within the soundscape itself, in my opinion, there are 3 main elements that really drive the experience. I don't feel like each one of them has a bigger role than the other. They all work individually, but as a collective in order to give the album the overall soundscape that it has. And those elements are the keyboards, the drums, and guitars. As far as keyboards are concerned, I really enjoy the symphonic elements that this record has. I enjoy how sporadic they are and how sprinkled they show up throughout the record and even throughout the songs. They don't necessarily drive the experience of the track, they don't drive the sound, but they create the necessary atmosphere that the songs call for, bringing the lyrics to life and making the songs feel a little bit more robust. Then you move on into the drums. The drums offer some consistency throughout this record, and that consistency is the baseline, the foundation, the pillars of the album. More often than not, they create some heaviness and they give some substance and volume to how the songs are put together, but you always feel like they're there in order to bring the tracks down and allow them to have this incredible road, this incredible baseline that everything else then can be piled upon or be constructed upon and not fall apart. So that is pretty much the consistent role that you're going to get from the drums. You're not going to get consistency of output because on some tracks the drums are going to be slightly heavier than others, but the consistency as far as the execution and what they overall are doing to the album is there across 9 tracks. Then the guitars. Very driven, very melodic, but not necessarily the driver of the experience. Like I said earlier, this is a record that really lives off of how all of these elements work well together and how they all combine with each other in order to push you forward through the listening experience. But there's not one of them really pushing themselves into the driver's seat and being the conductor of the sound, not even the guitars. They're melodic, they're driven, they're heavy at times, but they're just one element of the many elements that this record has, of the many layers that the sound has to offer across all 9 songs. Last but not least, you have the vocals. The vocals are magnificent throughout the record. If the sound has layers, the vocals have maximum amount of layers. You're going to get harsh vocals, clean vocals, backing vocals, layered vocals. There's pretty much everything you can think of as far as the vocal approach is concerned. And that is really one of the key elements that makes this album as robust, as powerful as it is, because it allows every single song to almost become a hymn. That's how the album comes across. So you have overall, in the big picture of this record, an album that has a lot of folk elements in the soundscape, that has a lot of classic heavy metal elements in the structure, and then it brings this, the vocals bring all of those elements together, give it this hymn vibe, and allow the sound to be a lot richer and have a lot more depth to it across every single piece that makes this album tick, either it be sound, vocals, lyrics, or overall experience. So this is a record that I felt was very well put together, very well crafted, very well executed, and it's an album that really doesn't offer a lot of weak spots. Perhaps if you could pick one, it would be that it needed a couple more heavier songs in order to balance things out a little bit. I felt that at times there was so much layers into the songs, there was so much for the listener to digest, that the heaviness kind of got lost within it. It spread out, the sound became big, but not necessarily heavy. There are some songs where the sound perhaps is a little bit more restrained, and that allows the tracks to have a little bit more heaviness, and I felt that it needed perhaps 2 more songs with that style, with that approach, in order for it to be a more balanced record from top to bottom. Once you get into favorite songs, I picked 3 tracks that offer slightly different approaches, slightly different looks. Into Eternal Darkness, great tempo, great track, classic heavy metal sound, classic heavy metal approach, classic heavy metal structure. The track stays consistent through verses and chorus. The chorus are slightly bigger, in part due to the layers that you're going to get from the vocals. But musically, this is a track that stays very balanced from beginning to end, and you almost don't feel the dip that you normally would get moving from the verses, or the peaks moving from the verses into the chorus. The keyboard melody throughout this track is magnificent. It adds a nice presence, but it doesn't drive the experience. The overall song feels like it's always building towards the chorus, but it stays very consistent throughout. Next, Out in the Dark, great piano opening, really creating a melancholic intro, and then that melancholy stays true throughout the rest of the song. Not necessarily because of the piano, but because of what it did at the beginning. It set the mood, it set the tone, and that mood stays consistent through other elements as they push themselves forward as you progress through this track. The drums blaze the path. They're very heavy on this song. At times they're really heavy, and they become very predominant. You can really feel them like they're the ones leading the track forward outside of any other instrument, either be guitars or bass. It's really the drums that are really setting the tone for what this track has in store. The guitars bring in melody, they fill in the gaps, they create a much richer experience, a much richer sound, and then the vocals are very dynamic. The chorus is magnificent, it's filled with sound, it's filled with power. This is a classic heavy metal power ballad in the way it's constructed, in the way it sounds, in the way it's put together. It just has a heavy melancholic vibe to it, which is also part of that DNA. I love how this song is put together. I love how it's delivered. It has incredible Iron Maiden vibes to it. Last but not least, The Flame. This is the closing track on the record, and I'm going to say that this is the heaviest song on the album. The drums are relentless. The guitar is very heavy, not as driven, not as melodic, really setting the tone with the drums together as a partnership in order to create heaviness, in order to create power, and create momentum for this track. Pushing almost into the melodic death metal arena in terms of how the song is constructed and how it is delivered with the soundscape that it has. Perfect closing to the record because it gives you a synopsis of everything this album has to offer. Everything that was there throughout the record is coming together in this last track. This is it. This is Wolfchant with Omega Bestia, out April 9th on Reaper Entertainment Europe. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.